Big Blue Thumb Productions presents the Podlie Podcast. Here's your hosts, Podlie Bill, Podlie Cliff, and Podlie Paul.
And good evening, everybody. It is the Podlie Podcast, Epi 133. William, you are number one tonight.
3,500 points. Unbelievable. 33 already. My goodness me, 133?
But yeah, 133 episodes already. So if you're just joining in, and I see a few of you are slowly coming on. Oh,
Cheryl.
She is on. She gets 2,500 points. William Kirkland. Wow.
That
was a rush. It was almost a tie between William and Nicole.
I know. So Nicole gets 1,000. Woohoo!
Yeah, there you go. You're just throwing the points out there tonight, Cliff.
Chuck them out there, Bill. Just chucking them out there, my friend.
Yeah, just tossing them out there. So again, you'll probably see no Paul. No commitment, no dedication.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, he's obviously forgotten about the fine print in his contract.
I know, right?
So,
I know. Yeah, and now I don't know. I think maybe because he's an actor, right? I mean, now we're gonna have to book a time with him, and we're gonna have to talk to his people, and his people are gonna have to talk to our people, etc. Right?
Yeah. So I don't know what's happening there. Cheryl's asking, what can I use the points she gets for? Can she buy a new toaster? Well, yeah.
Well, no. You can toast. You can toast the points. You could use the points to toast all kinds of people on the show, or roast all kinds of people on the show. How's that? Right? Maybe the more points you have, the more chance you get to roast other people. I don't know. But no, you can't buy a toaster. Because let me remind everybody, all right, where the points are awesome and very, very coveted, and everybody wants the points, they really don't mean anything.
Yeah. It's like a Seinfeld episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we lifted that shamelessly. And I could probably take blame for it. I don't want to blame the other people, though I probably would blame them also. But I think I lifted that shamelessly from whose line it is anyway.
And that's true. Yeah, right? I think we did. I think we did that. The points don't mean anything.
Don't mean anything. That's right.
Nicole says, "Hooray for having how many subscribers?" Well, Nicole, we're still at 17. That was what we were at last week.
Yeah. We expected to be at least 117 by now, but no.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. We had that challenge out there, Nicole. So I'm not sure exactly what has happened.
Cheers, William.
Cheryl says, a toast to you all. Nicole, the points mean thanks for being here. So how was your week there?
It was good. It was good. A little bit more chill, a little bit more relaxed, but still busy. And it was nice, a little bit warmer. So you feel a little bit better, a little bit more sunshine. I feel slightly browner than I was the previous week.
You look a lot more tan.
Because I got a little more sunshine, perhaps.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. But it was a good week. It was good. I got to roam around a little bit, and it was fun to drive around and sort of be a part of the warmer Chinook. I think I mentioned on this podcast once before that I like that word. Chinook.
Supposed to be Chinook this week too.
It must be a Chinook. I really like that word, and I like what it stands for. I like what it means. I like the result of it. I like what happens to me when I'm experiencing a Chinook.
Yeah, you do get a darker tan.
Exactly. And I feel all around better. So in my mind, it was a pretty good week. So how about you?
Good standard, work week. For me, we were recovering from our, vacation the week before that. And I was monitoring our step tracker when we were in Anaheim and at Disney. Yeah. We were doing over like 20,000 steps a day.
Dude, that's crazy. Is that, wait a minute, what's the quote unquote recommended?
I think you're only supposed to do, recommended, I guess, is like 4,000 to 5,000. I don't know.
I see. So you're way over, right?
We were way over. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So way over. But good week. And like you said, it was a little warmer. It's supposed to be warm this week, which is really good as well. And before we came on tonight, we were talking about different little sayings, and you just kind of said one there. You said so on and so forth. Off the air, I said wait and see, and so you were coming up like, why can't you just say like, why don't people just say like yes or no, or like why is it so on and so forth, or wait and see, or
and it's always two words, right? It's wait and see. It's this or that. It's it's come see, come saw, right? It's all these dual words, and I mean, we talked about a couple of them just off air at the beginning in our banter, but can't think of it at this moment. But yeah, it's always this double thing, and I think I find that interesting. Mind you, I find all kinds of words interesting, as you guys know.
Yeah, for sure. I think I missed saying hi to Laura. Hello there, Laura.
Hello, Laura.
You're here as well, which is good. So, hey, we didn't get to our topic last week because we got discussing a whole bunch of different things, which sometimes, as our regular viewers know, happens with us. So I threw this out there, and I think Cliff shared this just prior to the podcast on his page, but it says, if two people understand things differently, who's right?
Right. And what I did was if you look on the Podlie Podcast Facebook page as we're talking, I actually posted a picture on there, a meme, I guess, where two people are facing each other, and on the floor there's a 9 or a 6, depending on which side of the board you're on. And I posted that. Everybody's seen that meme, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I posted that on the Facebook page, Podlie Podcast Facebook page, just as a point of reference. Maybe we can start there, because it's two people. If you can't see it, or if you haven't seen it, it's two people facing each other, and they look on the floor, and there's a 9, and one person says that's a 6, and the other person says that's a 9, and then of course the commentary is that you're both right. It depends on the perspective of which you're viewing it. Now, I have a lot of problems with that particular picture, but nonetheless, that's a good point, or a jumping point to maybe start the discussion.
Yeah. So again, if two people understand things differently, who is right?
And is there exactly? I agree. Is there a right or a wrong? Could there be a time, or could there be an instance where both people are right? Is there such a thing as being more right, or is there such a thing as being more wrong? So all of these shady in betweens will come into play if we go into it in some detail. So just looking at it right now, Nicole, we're talking about words, and Nicole Samchuk says, my favorite from a friend is blue blee blah instead of yada yada yada. That's cool. And Cheryl Salter Roberts says 6 would be right. 6 would be right case. Add numbers like 9 are wrong.
Well, I think what she's saying is
odd numbers.
Yeah, she doesn't like odd numbers. So I think what she's saying is 6 would be right because odd numbers like 9 are just wrong.
Oh, I see what you're saying, Cheryl. So basically, then what you're telling me is that if you had 24 odds and ends on the table and 23 of them fell off, what would you have left? An odd or an end, right? And if it was an odd, you wouldn't like it. But if it was an even, then you would. Is that correct? Okay.
Right. There you go.
That's a funny thing. I've been saying that for about 20 years. I never made it up. Somebody else did. But that's a funny thing, right? If 24 odds and ends are on a table and 24 fell off, 23 fell off, what would you have left, an odd or an end? I mean, and again, it goes to the words and the expressions that we use, right?
For sure.
It seems to be part of the lexicon, and it's part of our culture, part of the English language that other people find maybe difficult to understand. But it's interesting because these things are what sort of gives the language its color, and also gives the language its ambiguity, which of course leads us back to the topic. If people have differing opinions, who's right and who's wrong, if you're looking at the same, I mean, that's the idea. If you're looking at the same thing, but you feel differently than I do, Bill, or I see differently than you do, then who's right? How would a person even go about quantifying that?
That's right. And is there a right? We have the freedom of expression. We have freedom of opinion.
Right.
So is there an actual right to again, Cliff, say you and I are looking at the exact same object, and maybe you see a texture on that object, and I'm saying no, it's the same object, but there's no texture on that.
Correct.
So am I right or am I wrong? Or do we pick the object up and say, okay, well, I'm feeling it and this is smooth, but you say, oh no, there's a texture, look to the paint or whatever, right? I'm just tossing that out there.
So then, is there such a thing as an absolute truth? I guess that would be the extension of it, the great extension, the very ominous extension, right?
Yeah.
So if you and I disagree on something, let's start with that 6 or 9.
Yeah.
That's obviously very subjective because the way
Yeah.
it's written. It's actually quite a non-interesting image. But anyway, to me, it's non-interesting because it's not really very intelligent. But the fact of the matter is, if you think something and I think something, if somebody came in and said, no, you both don't understand. One of you is right, one of you is wrong. It doesn't matter. This is the absolute truth right here, right?
Right.
If I said to you, this drumstick is made of wood,
Yeah.
right? And I know for a fact it's made of wood. At least that's the predominant. I mean, there's paint, obviously, there's writing, obviously,
Yeah.
there's stamps, obviously, but it's made of wood. Now, is that an absolute? Could you argue with that?
I guess in some respects, maybe you could. Maybe you could say, well, is it real wood? Is it
Right.
artificial?
It's
Is it
artificial.
wood that makes a sound? It sounds like wood. You're telling me
Yeah.
it's real wood, but is it real wood?
And how do you?
How do
Okay,
you know?
well, hey, let's be really philosophical here. How do you define wood? Right? How do you define it? What, like,
Yeah.
could you define any? Like, what about stone? What about wood that's petrified? Is it still wood or is it stone?
That's a good question.
Right.
People
So
say
we can get.
petrified wood. You don't say petrified stone.
That's right, because wood petrified is actually
Yeah.
stone, right? Technically,
Yeah. Yeah.
or is it? I don't know. I'm not educated in these sciences, so perhaps somebody can check in. But the fact of the matter is, there are so many um, ifs and thens and if thans and so on and so forth that sometimes absolute truth is highly questionable. And one of the questions would be, like I said, a very large reach and large extension of what we want to talk about. Is there such a thing as absolute truth? I guess that's
Yeah.
that's what would define whether you or I are right if we're looking at the same thing.
Right. Right. Like Nicole says, it's no different than homophones. You have to listen to the sentence to figure out which word is being used. Example, I or I. There's something in my eye. Well, yeah, if there's something in your eye, you're talking about your eye, right? It's not like I have
Mhm.
something in my eye.
Yeah,
So
and I mean that's a good point, Nicole. Homophones are very interesting, because it boils down to context in every way, and that's obviously your point. So I agree. Homophones are very interesting, and your perspective or your understanding of the situation. If you said something to me that was slightly more ambiguous, I mean, the line you quote, "There's something in my eye," that's sort of self-explanatory.
yeah,
So, but I can't think of something at this particular second. I'm sure I will in a couple minutes. But if it was slightly more ambiguous, then the question would be, am I understanding this correctly? Number one. Number two, what if the person saying it, what if the person actually communicating it didn't understand it enough to communicate it properly?
yeah,
And then when I understand it a certain way, they say, no, you're wrong. I'm like, no. This is the way I'm understanding it. But
yeah,
perhaps you're not communicating it properly.
right.
Correct?
Like an eye
So
for an eye.
yeah, exactly, right?
Now, is it an
Exactly.
eye for an eye,
An
or is it
eye for an
eye
eye.
for an eye?
That's right, right? So just to go back to that picture, I know that picture floated around the internet, and everybody thought that was, at least a lot of the people that posted it seemed to think that it was a highly philosophical debate, that look, it's a 9 and you can only see a 6, and I can it is now what do you call, very ambiguous because your perspective is the same as mine, or different than mine, etc., etc., etc. But I
Right,
look at it totally differently. I see it from a totally different perspective. I see it that the person who wrote the 9 on the floor wasn't very clear in their communication. It's not that the perspectives of the people observing it should be in question. I think the question should be with the person who wrote it, who is trying to communicate it.
right.
They're not
Yeah,
doing a very good job communicating it.
yeah, and I totally get that, and I think again you're right. It is based on communication, big time,
Yeah, it's
because
both the
like I say,
delivery and the acceptance, right?
you and I can be having a conversation, and you're communicating it in one way to me, and I'm not understanding
Right.
how you're communicating it, and I come back and say, "Oh, well, no, but Cliff, this is the way that I feel this should be," and you're saying, "Well, no, I just said that it's this way, and now we've got this back and forth. So again, who's right?
So I mean, and that's the thing, right? The communication is two ways. It's the person delivering the communication, and it's the person accepting the communication, right? So in so many terms, and that's why art is so ambiguous. I mean, Bill, when you and I did Arts Talk,
yes,
I remember having an artist on that. I cannot think of her name at this particular moment, but she was doing abstract art, like very abstract art.
right.
And I asked her a question which I thought to me was very kind of interesting, which was, how do you know when it's finished?
Yeah.
Right? Because I see this art, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, it's fascinating. It's amazing. I love it. It does something for me. I feel something when I look at it, but I don't understand it. I don't have your understanding of it. I can interpret something. I can put my own bent. I can have my own sort of perceptive ideas of what it is. But what if she told me at that point that, oh, wait a minute, I know it's on the canvas, but it's not finished yet?
Yeah.
Because I don't know when abstract art is finished. If I was doing abstract art, if any artists are on here, please, if you have any comment. But I don't know when it's finished. I have no idea what constitutes a finished piece of abstract art. Is it the artist that looks at it and go, yeah, I'm done?
It's not like a book or a film. We've got a beginning, middle, and an end,
and a plot and a structure, and you don't have any of that, right? So in my mind, I think to myself, how do I know? So if I don't know if it's finished, how do I interpret it? And if I interpret it, how do I know I'm interpreting it in any way, quote unquote, correctly? Not that you could do that with art, but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I'm just trying something here, Cliff. I'm going to try and put up this image here. Can everybody see that? So this is the image. This is the image Cliff is talking about. So is it a 6 or is it a 9?
Right.
So in case you haven't seen it.
Oh, nice, Bill. I'm happy you were able to show that. So yeah, it was floating around the net for a while, and like I said, a lot of people posting it. I don't know. I'm just guessing. A lot of people posting it thought, hey, this is a really valid argument where two different perspectives are correct or not correct, right?
Yeah.
But the step further that I looked at, the first thing is, well, who wrote it on the floor? They weren't very clear. They left it open for ambiguity.
Yep, that's right. And the person saying, well, it's a 9 could easily walk around and say, no, that's a 6. You're right. Yeah.
Now that is 100% valid point, right? I mean, you could easily walk around the other way and look at it from the other person's perspective and say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That kind of does look like a 6, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the willingness to participate in someone else's ideas and someone else's perceptions and someone else's ways of thinking, I think that's how we respect that, is we go around to the other side and see what they're seeing.
Yep. Yeah, right? For sure.
But the question is, are they both right? If you look at the meme as it is, the image as it is, you could say, yes, they are.
Right.
But shouting at each other, 6, 9, 6, 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? No, because they could, because the crux of this is that they could both be right, but they could also both be wrong.
Right. And it takes it right back to, as you just said, it's sharing a different view of that conversation. Right.
That's right.
James says that's a lowercase g if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, that could definitely be it, James, depending on your font preference, I guess.
Yeah, that's your perspective. So yeah,
there we go. So now we have now we can add a third perspective, and everybody can yell at each other that they're right.
Yeah. And again, the guy who's saying it's a 6 could easily walk around and say, oh no, yeah, from this perspective, you are right. That does definitely look like a 9.
That's
so right. So it's kind of how you share it all. I'm gonna take that away now. But anyway, very good example there, Cliff. And I'd be curious, what most of our viewers that are on with us right now think about that as well. Obviously, James says it's a G, so we know what James' point of view.
He just likes it because it's the first letter of his last initial. It's the first initial of his last name. That's all.
James G.
So that's what he sees. So that's what he sees, right?
He's got kind of a rapper name there, James. Yeah. This is James G.
So it brings me back to one of my favorite quotes, right? The importance of an event to an individual is determined by the degree to which he feels himself involved, right? So Mr. G over here, he doesn't see a 6, he doesn't see a 9, because that doesn't involve him. He sees the G.
Yeah. He's brought a whole new perspective into the
A whole
conversation.
new perspective, because his last name starts with a G. How'd it go, James? That's just the way to do it.
So now you don't have two people in the conversation. You've now brought a third in, who's giving a separate perspective, who's now standing in the center between the guy who's saying 6 and the guy who's saying 9. Now you've got this guy standing in the center who's going, no, that's not a 9 or 6. That's a lowercase g.
That's crazy.
Oh, gee, now who's right?
Oh, gee.
So, yeah, again, it's really about, perspective, and we're talking communication. We're talking, looking at a number, as I mentioned, it could be as simplified as, like I said, even looking at a color on a piece of paper on a wall, right? And you might be looking at, I don't know, color pink, and you say, oh no, that's more orange than it is pink, and neither one. Now, of course, if you're colorblind, that's a different story in that conversation. But if you're not colorblind, and I could say, yeah, Cliff, that's definitely a pink wall, and you're going, no, that's an orange wall. And it's okay. Well, let's turn the lights on, because maybe the lighting is making it look different, right?
What's fascinating, Bill, when you start talking about colors, and I think I talked about this on a different episode as well, because I think it's so fascinating that when I say post office red, a certain image comes in your mind of what post office red is.
Yeah. And
a certain image comes in my mind of what post office red is. But the fact of the matter is, those two images are unlikely the same. But your point of reference for that particular color that you're seeing in your head is the post office red. And my particular reference for that color that I'm seeing in my head is also post office red. But that doesn't mean to say that if I could choose the exact color I'm seeing and put it down and like mix a paint color exactly to what my mind is seeing and put it on a piece of paper, and you did the same, I bet you the colors would be different.
And they may be, like, visually, when you say
color differently.
Right. Now, visually, the first thing that pops into my head when you say post office red is the mailboxes.
Right.
And you could maybe throw in a stop sign. The red is similar in a stop sign, but not exactly. Right.
But you understand what I mean, though, right? Because just for argument's sake, if you looked at a post office, just for argument's sake, if you looked at a mailbox and you saw a shade of red that was, let's say, 80% of pure red, and I saw in my mind that's James just put out the code,
the
color code, right? Color code. Yeah. So we know that now. We know that code represents post office red. But the fact of the matter is, the red that you see in your mind that is represented by that number is literally going to be different than the red I see in my mind that is represented by that same number. The difference is our point of reference is the same.
Right.
If you said post office red, in my head, it's always going to see this. If James writes that number right there, the code, what is that, a hexadecimal code? In my mind, that's going to be what it looks like. But essentially, like I said, if you were to be able to recreate the exact color you see in your mind and paint it on a piece of paper, and I was able to do the same thing and paint it on the same piece of paper, there's a very high probability that it's not the same red. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly. I hope that's understandable.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That does make sense. Now, what I'm curious, James, is if anybody says a color to you, if somebody says, "Oh, that definitely is orange," do you just throw the color code at them, or like you just have that memorized, or how does that work?
It's Google, Bill. It's Google. If Jared was around, I don't know why he's. Sorry, if Paul was around, if he had any commitment or dedication, we could get his computer to say, "Okay, Google, what hexadecimal code is post office red?"
James just says yes. So I guess James knows all the color codes then.
Hey, James, type in FF6633. So that's a really nice orange. Just saying. And also FF6600. That's a nice orange as well. So nonetheless.
Any of our viewers listening, do you have Google nearby? Because we can do that. We can say, hey, Google. We've done that before.
Yeah, especially Paul. Paul's computer is funny, right? Because he's using his laptop as his camera and everything right up close. So it's right up there. That's great when you could say, okay, Google.
James says he's not Dutch.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the point of reference for that, Mr. James. Maybe you can elaborate, but
yeah, we're not Dutch either, just so you know.
Dutch.
Yeah.
Laura says she doesn't have Google. What do you mean you don't have Google? How can you not have Google? Okay, I mean you should have Google in the palm of your hands.
Yes, we want to be able to say that. Hey Google.
And I don't understand how you have Google. I mean, I'm not sure how you have Google.
Yeah,
we say
Google's, that Google's out there for the masses. So
yeah, we always say that. Do you have Google? Well, I don't know. Let me check my wallet, see if I have Google.
Yeah. More like, pardon me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I looked in the mirror this morning. I look fine.
Yeah. Again, it's those idiosyncrasies of our language, right?
Yeah.
So Laura says I have Google on my phone, but not Alexis. Okay. Well, if Alexis is on your phone, I think you should get her to get up because she's probably gonna ruin the phone.
Yeah.
Just saying. I know that's lame. What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's again another play on words, right? You say that. Do you have Google? Well, yeah, I don't know. I look fine.
it's like, do you have Google? Oh my God, I hope not. I'll have to see my doctor.
I better get is there a blood test for that?
I get a blood test for that.
Going to the doctor. Can I get a blood test for Google, please?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But
are they the largest company of it? No, they're not. Who's the largest company? Is
somebody have
Tesla?
to Google that. Somebody have to Google.
We'll have to Google.
I don't know if Tesla's the largest company. I'm not sure about that.
So any thoughts, cares, complaints, questions, concerns, yellings, non-yellings about Musk owning Twitter?
Well, yeah, I was just as you brought that up, I was listening to some reports today from 2 or 3 different news outlets, actually, and I guess he's having a bit of trouble there right now. A lot of the staff is walking out after he sent out that message.
But is that trouble or is that him just trying to thin the herd?
Well, it could be. I don't know. He sent that email out saying, blah blah. You have to be willing to work, 12.
Yeah, willing to work long, hard for Twitter point 2 and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter, though, Bill, is Metaverse laid off 11,000 people, right?
Yeah.
Google is trying to lay off people, but they don't want to. They don't want to ruin their employee-friendly demeanor as a company, right? But they hired 12,000 people in the last quarter of this year, and now of course everything is slowed and they need to get rid of these people, so they're trying to get rid of people through attrition, right? So who else is laid off? Everybody's laid off people. So Amazon's laying off people, I believe, right? So now Musk comes along, he lays off a bunch of people to begin with, and then he takes out some of the people that were bad mouthing him. I don't know why you would bad mouth the president of your company, but nonetheless, the people who are bad mouthing him on their networks and in public, well, it's like, screw you, you're fired. And then he puts out this missive saying, hey, listen, you better be prepared to work, and yada yada yada. And 50% of his employees are gone with 3 months severance pay. I mean, it's not a bad way to push out a bunch of the dead wood if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he just wrote one little email and he's now no longer on the hook for 2,500 employees.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard to say what the man thinks. It's hard to know because he is by every stretch of every imagination a genius.
Yeah.
Now, is he a genius in his methodologies for running a company as he is as an engineer? I don't know. Right. But the fact of the matter is, he certainly took a chunk of people off his shoulders. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, no, he sure did. And I also heard that apparently there has been a bit of an uprising at SpaceX against him as well.
Is that right?
From employees. Employees have written some sort of big letter against him about the way he upset about the way they're being treated by him, etc. Things that he has said, and so on and so forth. And some of them have started to go public now and are coming out. They've been fired. But now I've come out and started to speak out against this so-called letter that a bunch of employees have written to go against Elon at SpaceX. Yeah, again, you're right. He is a genius for sure. Do I agree with everything he says? No, but I don't.
Of course not.
You don't have to agree with what everybody says. And some people with the IQ that he has, maybe aren't always the best people type person either.
Yeah.
Right. But they get what they want and they get to where they need to go, and they make things.
And let's face it, you don't.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you don't become probably one of the world's most productive people in a short time and be normal at the same time. Like, he's not a normal guy, right? He's not a regular cowpoke from the whatever. Right?
Yeah.
He's a guy that has literally changed the face of the world in a very short amount of time, right? And is probably one of the most productive people when it comes to moving the world forward that we've seen, certainly in our lifetimes. Well, how would you won't expect him to be this normal, average, everyday dude?
No, and we've talked about this on the show before. We look what he's done with Tesla electric cars. Now look what he's done with space travel and SpaceX. He's moved that way further forward than NASA and all these people that have been around forever. He comes in and just bang, all of a sudden things start happening.
So in terms of that, then, Bill, it wouldn't be a stretch if a person thought to themselves, all the hullabaloo surrounding Twitter is not a bad thing for him. It's not a stretch then to think that he has some vision of what Twitter should and could be. And he's going to get there regardless of the bumps. I mean, hey, let's face it, Tesla almost went bankrupt in 2018.
A couple of times they almost went bankrupt.
And now it's the largest company on the planet. So for people, I mean, I know there's a bunch of people trying to take him down. I mean, I get that part, right? Where I don't think Tesla, also a bunch of people tried to take him down, including the SEC. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, right now, there's a whole gargantuan smack of the population that are rooting for his demise and trying their best to ensure that the demise of Twitter happens, because it would somehow vindicate them that he bought it and he's changing it to whatever platform he thinks is good, right? So, and I get that part. But I guess what I'm saying is, given his track record with SpaceX, with Tesla, and the Boring Company and the AI company and all these things, there's no reason to necessarily believe off the cuff that he can't do the same with a social network.
Well, yeah, and those that are successful have the ability to put a team around them that makes them become successful. So if that means that, and look at, you just have to even look at professional sports for an example. Right? They're going to eliminate the guys on the team that aren't performing up to the standard that they feel they need to be to become a champion. So Elon Musk has his way of getting the people around him that he knows are going to turn, whether it's a Tesla, SpaceX, Twitter, whatever, into a success. He knows how to get those people to do that.
Yeah. And that's a reasonable argument, right?
And right. So, by throwing out that email that he did, was, as you said, Cliff, is a very good test. It's going to weed out those that are going to say, well, I'm not working on holidays and I'm not working 12 to 14-hour days. But if those young guys out there, young females and males that are, I don't know, maybe single, don't have a family and want to make
and good engineers and gun-ho and want a chance to show off themselves,
they might look at it and go, I'm here. I'll work however I need to work to be successful with this.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I mean, it's one way of eliminating the shaft from the grain, so to speak, right? And Patterson, Patterson billboards.
Yep.
Years ago, I watched a really good documentary from him, and how when he had car dealerships, he would see a salesman come in, start to work, and in a day or so he'd know, and he would fire them on the spot. And he says it sounded cruel. He says, but the fact of the matter is, I know from my experience that this person is not cut out for this job. Better he knows that now, right?
Yeah.
Than 3 years from now. right? When he's put in 3 years of time and realized that I can't work for this guy, or I can't work for this company, or I'm not a good salesperson, or I don't fit in this company, whatever. And he used to say that I would ruthlessly fire these people, but what they didn't understand, it was not only good for the company, but was also good for them, right? So perhaps, just perhaps, the people that left Twitter, and I'm not saying that this is true, I'm just discussing, but perhaps the people who left Twitter will not be very happy under his command anyway. And he's not selling Twitter anytime soon. So maybe it's a good thing that they parted ways.
And could very well be. And just before I get on to my next point about that, Cliff, look at the clock.
Oh, look at that. It's late. I can't believe it. It's 36 minutes and 35 seconds. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome a little later to the middle of the podcast. Happy to have you all here.
Just about, no, and I read, I've read a couple of Elon's books on Elon now, including one that was based around SpaceX and the building of that company. But it's the same thing. You read in the book where employees talk about working with Elon, and they all say, he's a tough, hard task worker. He wants, when he walks into a meeting, he wants an answer now, not later. He wants things to be done. When he says, if I want this done in a week, get it done in a week. Don't come up to him and say, well, we can't do it in a week. We could do it in 2.
Right.
He's going to say, well, fine, I'll find somebody who can do it in a week then.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, maybe that's what it takes to build a company like Tesla. Maybe that's what it takes to build a company like SpaceX. I mean, can you imagine sitting around the round table and he says, yeah, I know NASA sends up rockets and destroys them in the atmosphere when they come down again. But you know what? We should build a rocket that can actually
reuse.
Do you know, Bill, you probably read this in his book. I have not read his book, but I read an article recently about how they went to Russia because they wanted to buy the rockets from Russia, right? And what happened? Russia laughed at them because here he's this kid who just sold PayPal for $125 million, right?
Yeah.
And so he comes in here saying, I want to buy Russian rockets, and they basically laughed at him. So then on the way home then on the way home on the plane, he says to his 2 cohorts, I think we should just build one. Yeah. And even they were a little bit shocked, even though they knew him. Well, guess what?
And that was the big thing, right? He said, well, let's just build our own. We can build them in-house. It'll keep costs down, et cetera, et cetera.
That takes a gargantuan amount of courage and confidence in oneself.
For sure.
Right.
And they also battled through numerous failures through that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not a stretch to say that just because Twitter is quote unquote, which I don't think or don't know that it is, quote unquote, suffering right now because he lost employees or whatever. I don't think that he's that stupid to be able to put out a letter like that, not expecting a whole bunch of people to leave.
Yeah.
I'm sure he expected a percentage to leave. I don't know if he expected as large a percentage. Who knows? But maybe he did. I don't know. I like what Laura says here. Laura says, I feel we are Elon Musk lovers here. LOL. Do you know what, Laura? I don't consider myself an Elon Musk lover, but I don't consider myself an Elon Musk hater. There are a lot of Elon Musk haters. I'm talking visceral freaking hate out there for this guy, even though he's done nothing to them personally. So I'm not, and I swear I can speak for Bill as well, but I'll let him speak for himself. But I'll tell you, from a personal standpoint, I'm not an Elon Musk lover. I don't know the man. I know the man from what I read about the man, and that's it. So I tell you what, I'm an Elon Musk respecter. I respect what he's accomplished. I respect his talents. I respect his drive. I respect his ambition. I respect his vision. I respect a lot of things about Elon Musk, but I wouldn't call myself an Elon Musk lover.
And I agree. I wouldn't say I'm an Elon Musk lover either. There's a lot of things that I've heard him say, even, watching him do talks, et cetera, that I don't agree with. But on the flip side, like you said, Cliff, he has accomplished a lot that a lot of people attempted to do and never got there. And he's jumped there, like we said, with SpaceX.
In a very short time.
In a very short time. Yeah, the things he's done with SpaceX and Tesla and the things that will happen. He'll get to Mars. He keeps saying he's going to get there. I'm sure he will get to Mars before. I think his plan is still for 2024, 2025, somewhere like that. I'm sure he'll get there before NASA does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
James brings up an interesting point here. He says you get a nice head start when your wealth and education when you get a good start on your wealth and education when your family owned an emerald mine in South Africa. You know what, James? Nobody would argue that you got a head start. But I will tell you this, the head start that he got, he traveled across Canada, traveled across the United States, tried a bunch of things, taught himself how to be an engineer. He's 100% self-taught. So he never went to school to be an engineer. He's 100% self-taught. That's the drive and ambition I spoke of earlier. And on top of that, when he built PayPal, when he sold PayPal for 125 million or whatever it was, and put every red cent and penny into Tesla. That's a lot of commitment, Bill.
No, it sure is. And I, again, looking at, in reading his book about him, his parents would talk about how even when he was younger, like, 9, 10, 11, his interest was to go out and, start reading books on engineering and, coming home with, big books and things like so.
Yeah.
He, from a young age, he was reading everything he could because he had such an interest.
Such a drive and motivation for engineering, right? And he's completely self-taught. So it's not like him owning an emerald mine gave him this 8 years of education in university, right?
Yeah.
And the only other point I'd like to make to that, James, because a lot of people say this, well, he had this start, right? Okay, but Bill, if you started with 10 grand and at the end of 20 years, you're a millionaire, okay? Yep. Is it somehow some big thing against you that you started with 10 grand? No, you took what you had.
You took the ambition.
What you had, right?
Yeah.
And what you did was you multiplied it in the course of your lifetime, right? People talk about Donald Trump. Oh, yeah, he had 14 million. His father gave him 14 million. Okay, but now he's worth 7 billion.
Yeah.
So the same thing would be if I gave you 10 grand and 10 years later, you're a millionaire. That doesn't diminish you that you started with 10 grand.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't diminish you because if I started with nothing and I became 100,000-aire and you started with 10 grand and you became a millionaire, so what? The fact of the matter is we both increased our lot by the ambitions and drive and work ethic that we had.
Yep.
So I don't think it diminishes the person to start from now. Fine. If you're talking about privilege, if you're talking about all type of stuff, fine. Where you start from makes a difference. But if you're talking about commensurate success from your efforts, I don't think anybody can argue that the people who have made massive successes of themselves, I mean, look at what's his name from Amazon, right? He started in his garage. Look at Bill Jobs. What happened to Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs started in his garage, right? So you could say, oh yeah, well, we started out, but he had a garage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that. You could say, oh, well, yeah, but he had a garage. Some of us don't have garages.
Yeah.
I mean, we all start with something.
There's a lot of success stories out there with many millionaires, successful business owners, etc., that started with $500 in their pocket, and through ambition, drive, and ideas and thoughts, they took that $500 and off they went. Right? Because they had the drive to do something with it. It's easy to say, well, I've got $500 in my pocket, but what am I going to do with it? Well, I guess I'll just spend it, and I'm broke.
Go have a night at the bar, right?
Yeah. So, and now James.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, James made a comment here. Luck is definitely involved, but I think I have to disagree somewhat, James. Luck is somewhat involved, I guess, in some of the things these guys do. But I think when you look at some of these multimillionaires and these successful guys, whether it's Jeff Bezos, again, whether you love him or like him, or Elon Musk or whatever, I think there's a lot more than luck. This is drive, learning, pushing hard, finding ways to make things work. Again, fighting through failures.
Yeah, talk about stick-to-itiveness, right?
How many times those engines failed? How many times those rockets blew up? That Elon, now has the reusable rockets working. How many times those engines blew up? How many times those things crashed and came down? How much money that cost? So that's perseverance, and we're going to make this work. And he was losing money big time until it started to rebuild again. So SpaceX, as you said, Tesla was almost bankrupt. They just pulled it out of the fire.
And Bill, he talks of a story I saw in an interview. He tells a story where back in 2018, 2019, when Tesla was almost bankrupt, right? And there were quality control issues and so on and so forth. You know what he did? He slept on the factory floor for 3 months. And he basically learned every single solitary machine in there. And he said at that time, when Tesla started to operate again, if there was anything wrong on any single solitary machine in that building, he could fix it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
If you cannot respect that, I think there's something wrong with you. I mean, anybody can respect that kind of drive, that kind of learning, that kind of ambition, and that kind of dedication to something. I mean, you must have some respect for that, right? And one last thing, sorry, Bill. One last thing I'd like to say, James, as far as luck goes, there's a fantastic definition of luck. You can go look up a definition of luck, and I don't know what you'll find in the dictionary. I've never looked it up, but there's a great definition for luck, and that is it's the convergence of opportunity and preparedness. All right?
Yeah.
The convergence of opportunity and preparedness is luck. So you could say it was luck, or you could say that he spent decades, couple of decades, reading and learning, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the opportunity comes along. PayPal gets sold for a great amount of dollars that he himself created with a friend, and it gets sold, and he puts every stinking red penny into his new endeavor. I don't know that that's luck. I think that's a convergence of preparedness and opportunity.
Right. For me, the word luck means if you become a millionaire and it's luck, maybe you won the lottery.
Right. That's luck.
That's what luck means to me. But
if you created it,
yeah, these guys like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, whoever, right? And again, we've already said, there's people that love them, there's people that hate them. Yeah. If they, have taken that drive to build something from, nothing into a huge empire, then all the power to them. That's not luck. That's work.
Yeah. And James asked the question here. He says, would he have created everything had he been born 20 years earlier?
Oh, but let's look at the technology at that point as well.
Would Henry Ford have created everything that he created if he was born 20 years earlier? Would Steve Jobs have done that? Would Bill Gates have done that? Bill, would you have created everything that you currently have in your life, like a podcast, movie producing, blah, 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 20 years ago, if the technology didn't exist to do what we're doing now?
It would have had to been way different. Correct. I used reel-to-reel way back because we didn't have this technology.
Okay, so James said he was lucky to be born into the life he was. Okie dokie.
Yeah. So again, I don't look at as really, again, luck. Because maybe his family was rich, but there's a lot of people out there that are very successful business people that were not born into rich families. They had single parents. They lived, luckily they're maybe lucky they had food on the table every, week, and they've turned into millionaires. So is that luck?
Yeah. So James, when I responded to would he have created everything if he had been born 20 years early, James says exactly, like an exclamation point to his exclamation mark to his point. James, I'm not sure that I understand what point you think you've made, because the fact of the matter is, would he have created everything had he been born 20 years earlier? Perhaps not, but he might have created something totally different that was more appropriate for the time, that was more available at the time with the technologies available. He did not create the SpaceX rockets with the technology that existed. He created the technology that to have the rocket that landed. He wasn't there at the right time, at the right moment, at the right place to all of a sudden become the master of rockets that land. He created it. Same thing with PayPal. PayPal did not exist. He created it. So the fact of the matter is, in every single timeline, from Alexander the Great to Genghis Khan to Jesus Christ to whoever, we all have the opportunity of the time that we're born in. I don't know if you want to call that lucky, because then by that imagination, every single successful person on the planet was simply lucky to be born at the time that they were born. I don't know that that's a great argument, to be honest with you, my friend.
Yeah. Again, it's a different, if you're born in the 30s, that's a much different time than if you're born in the 80s.
Yeah, but there were success stories in the 30s. In every single era, there have been success stories. So now what? Do you chalk up all of these successes to luck?
Yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You could be born in the 30s and become a multimillionaire in the 30s based on what was available to you in that time. You took
Exactly.
something and made something big in the 1930s and became a huge millionaire, making something out of nothing. And now if you're born in the 80s or 90s, you're in technology, maybe, you create some new type of technological advancement or whatever the case might be,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what James is saying. Born at this time, he's lucky to be born into this era. Well, it so happens that because he has the penchant for technology and industry and engineering and all these things, yeah, the time that he's born in will lend itself to that. But the fact
Right.
of the matter is that's true of absolutely anybody who's ever been a success. The time that they live in. I mean, Bailey and Barnum, when they were doing their schlepping all over the world, well, that was new as well, right?
Yeah.
All the movie theaters that came up in the 30s and started in the 40s and are now the most wealthiest people on the planet, the most wealthiest companies in the world. Well, you could say the same thing. They were born at the right time, right?
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying. I just don't buy the argument as in any way that somehow diminishes a person's success.
And I guess if you wanted to flip it around, though, if you looked at some of the, and I'm going to throw reality TV out there. So if you look at like the Kardashians,
Yeah.
So those girls were born into a very rich family. Their dad was a real estate mogul, fashion, whatever, etc.
Yeah.
As is their mom. So they were born into that environment. So they've had money virtually all their lives. They've never had to suffer knowing if there's going to be food on the table from one night to the next night. Now, yes, they all own their own companies and that kind of thing. So I guess if you look at a family like that compared to, yes, you can say, well, Elon Musk's family had a mine or emerald mine or whatever the case might be, but so what? He didn't go into emerald mining.
No.
He created himself. He, like you said, he became an engineer. He's doing SpaceX, etc. We can't say, oh, he jumped into the family's emerald mine and he became rich because they had the emerald mine, and so he started running the emerald mine, and now he's rich. Well, the Kardashian girls really became rich because of the name, the Kardashians, and their parents already had that money, and they were handed all that money, right? So, so is that luck?
And they had every penny to pursue whatever they wanted to pursue.
That's right. They didn't have to go out and find that money.
Musk didn't use that. He didn't take an 8-year education. He traveled across the country looking for something to do. Found out PayPal, did PayPal, and made himself wealthy, right? But then he took all that wealth, every single solitary penny of it, and put it into SpaceX, into Tesla, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, I get the argument. I just don't necessarily buy it.
Yeah. So that's why I kind of look, and I agree with that as well. I just, like I said, threw the Kardashians out there because, for them, maybe you can use the word luck. Those girls were born into money and they could have whatever they wanted, at 15 or 16, if they wanted a Mercedes, they got a Mercedes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas you and I couldn't get a Mercedes at the age of 16 or whatever, if they had them, at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't. So for them, maybe that's luck. But James, he did sell PayPal. There were some issues between him and the partners of PayPal and board on PayPal, et cetera. But he did sell basically his whole portion of it.
Yeah, I sold his whole portion of it.
Yeah, but anyway, so interesting discussion as we come down to about 5 minutes.
Funny, Bill, because we go back to the beginning of this, right? I have all these people in here that disagree with me or have their own points of perspective on the success of another individual. So, and I've put forward my arguments, and some people put forward their arguments, and you and I are on somewhat the same page. And Laura's about whether we love Elon or what, but that's obviously not my perspective. But the fact of the matter, it goes back to what we're saying earlier, right? Is that the perspective, the two people have a different perspective. Who's correct? Well, we could boil it down to facts. We can say, hey, wait a minute, what are the known facts, and what are the known I don't know, tertiary facts, secondary facts, and tertiary facts. And if we boil it all down, I think I used to say this a lot when I was younger, because I used to be very fond of debating and sometimes very fiery debates I used to have with some other very intellectual people, and it was a lot of fun to be able to just sort of, bash around an idea. But in the moment, it always got a little bit hot, and I like that. It's kind of cool, right? But the fact of the matter is, I've always said to people that if you actually take as many facts as you can handle, as you can ingest, and then you take the secondary facts and the tertiary facts and possibly some opinions and so on and so forth, and just let it simmer in your mind, just let it simmer in your brain. And it's my theory and my expectation and my thought and possibly my hope that when you do that and let it simmer in your brain, slowly the truth will actually rise to the top, very much like boiling cream, like milk, where the cream rises to the top. I think if you take the facts, you take the secondary, tertiary, and whatever facts, opinions, etc., and let it simmer within you, I think slowly the truth will rise to the top, and you'll have a better understanding of things. That's just my theory.
For sure. And I just threw this up on the screen because we started off with this. So that's kind of how we got around to the whole conversation. Again, is it it's a 6 or is it a 9? So I just threw the image back up there again to show it off to everybody one more time before we wrap up here tonight. Laura says, I just find we chat about Elon a fair amount on here. That's all, LOL.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, Laura, he's one of the pivotal people in our world currently. He is literally one of the most pivotal people in our world currently, who's actually promoting what this world needs more than anything, which are two things. Number one, he's on the side of the climate change argument that wants to do something about the climate, and he is actually doing something about it instead of talking about it. Number one. Number two, we should be and we need to be off-worlders, and we have to have that technology, which of course that's what he's doing. So he's one of the most pivotal people in our planet. So I'm afraid I can't apologize for talking about him very often.
Yeah, he still leads the way in regards to space. Jeff Bezos is probably a close second, and but Jeff Bezos, he takes people into space. It's an 11-minute flight. You're up and down, and you're in space for all of a couple minutes and back down. But Elon is taking people to space on missions, etc. And we'll get there closer and closer. Laura says, I missed that on Facebook. We had the topic always available, so I could remember it to get back to the topic. LOL. Now on YouTube, can't remember. LOL.
Well, Laura, you're just gonna have to be more engaged. I'm kidding.
There you go. All right, we've got about a minute and a half left.
Sure. I just wanted to read what Laura said earlier on. She said, I didn't get my vehicle until I was 21, yet I didn't get my learners until I was 20. LOL, was in way too many car accidents that made me nervous to drive. Well, it's good that you got your license though, Laura. Hey, listen, it's a minute and a half left. I want to tell you all, thank you so much for dropping by. Thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you so much for your debating, your opinions putting forward, and basically lighting up the board. It's fantastic. I know I speak for Bill, and I certainly know I speak for Podlie, even though he doesn't have the commitment and dedication to be here. That we really appreciate you folks being here on this Monday night. We always talk about Must Listen Monday, MLM Monday. And we really appreciate you guys showing up. Really appreciate you lighting up the board with chat, etc. If you enjoyed this program or talk or chat or whatever the case may be, do share it. And if you don't like it, we'll share it anyway, because maybe you don't like it, but somebody else will. Perspective and all. Nice. So do share it if you liked it. And again, thank you so much for being here. It's much appreciated. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. And you know what? It stays on Facebook. It stays on YouTube, right, Bill?
YouTube. Yeah, it's on the YouTube channel, so you can go back there and watch it. And again, we play the audio portion of it on Friday nights on soundsugarradio.com at 10 o'clock, so you can rehear the audio there as well. And just lastly, before we wrap this up, Nicole, you put that challenge out last week about finding more subscribers. We're still at 17. So let's see if we can get up to maybe 35 or 40 for next week and see what we can come up with.
And if you haven't subscribed and you're listening to it currently, silently, not commenting, we appreciate you. If you get a chance, please do like the page. We would appreciate that.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you all next Monday.
Good night, y'all. Thanks for the great conversation.
See ya.